Diagnosis, I think, in dentistry has been, we're only presenting half of diagnosis. I'll see someone make a presentation, usually it's a thing on the internet. Says, I want a complete diagnosis. I want full EMGs. I want the joint sonography, and I want JVA, and I want to ask them how they feel, and I want a complete diagnosis. So you know all about their symptoms, you know all about their signs. That's half a diagnosis. Because the diagnosis is the nature and cause of a disease or injury. When you have the nature of the condition, you know all about their symptoms, you know all about their signs, you know all about their movement, you know all that stuff. But how did it get that way? Or how does it stay that way? That's the cause. So when someone keeps taking their car back into the shop, and you keep repairing it the same way, pretty soon you say, what are you doing? What are you doing to cause this same damage? What are you doing to cause this overheat every single time? Well, I don't know, man, it's defective. It's just weird. No, it's not. You're doing something. So I look at this thing, I call it a diagnostic cycle. In our world, in this masticatory world that we observe and calculate on, and we diagnose and treat things, there's purposeful function in the masticatory system. There are certain things that we need to do. We have to bite into things. We have to chew things. We have to talk. So the forms that we are provided with, that function obligates those forms. That's why those things are there, because there's things we need to do. And so our function, our purposeful function, obligates the forms that we have, the shapes of our teeth and the way the muscles work. Those forms allow you to do things that you don't need to do. So those forms, the shapes of our teeth and the musculature, allows us to do stuff you don't need to do. That's okay. You can do weird stuff. You can drive your car in a dangerous way, and you can. You're not just supposed to. Enough purposeless function will then to dictate altered forms. So when there's too much parafunctioning happening, the forms start to become altered. And the nature of the parafunctional activity, the nature of that purposeless function will now dictate how the forms are going to be altered. Musculature can be altered. Your dentition becomes altered. The way you talk in your jaw tracts becomes altered. The speed in which you close or open, and you're measuring, like, oh my gosh, look at the velocity of closure. Those things are being modified because of purposeless function. Now you have altered forms. Those altered forms now start to modify purposeful function. So when one tooth is really razored off and flat or weird, you start to chew or do things differently because of your altered forms. And you can adapt. So we've seen patients with the goofiest looking teeth, or they're missing a lot of them. They're not skinny, they're not fat, they're normal. So they have accommodated to their altered forms. But they have to still modify how they function. And we see that all the time. Dentistry starts to pick out spots on that cycle and starts to accuse it of being causative of symptoms. So now when a patient has symptoms and they have some complaints, our job is to figure out where on this cycle that those symptoms are derived from. Some would take a look at worn teeth and say, I'll tell you what, the fact that you've got that canine worn flat and the fact that these molars are flat, you can't chew properly anymore. And so because you can't chew properly, you have this new posture, and that's why you have symptoms. So I think the cause of your symptoms are your altered forms. I have to fix all your teeth and put in canine guidance. And I always say, well, how do you think it got that way, though? If you put the teeth back where they were, aren't you going to shred them again? How did it get that way? Or they'll say, I've just looked at you at my jaw tracker and your jaw is closing too fast and it's moving over here when I'm having you chew on stuff. I think the way you're functioning is inappropriate. I need to change that. That's why you're symptomatic. Or you don't have the right occlusion. Your forms, you have a class 3 occlusion. Actually, I'm going to call it a malocclusion. It's bad. Your forms are bad. The way they line up are bad, and that's why you're symptomatic. There's too many people with goofy occluding schemes and worn out teeth and chew funny, and they feel fabulous. Should you intervene and say, I'm going to make sure you feel fabulous forever? No, you would never mess with that. I think purposeless function or parafunction, it's a pathophysiology. That's what's driving these symptoms. But unless you understand how pathophysiology works, this parafunction, if you can't think like your opponent thinks, you'll be deceived because your opponent, the condition, speaks to the patient and tells you things, and you go, oh, okay. The patient, well, I don't do that. Oh, okay, you don't? I won't consider it then.